Assalamu alaikum. So in this video, I'm going to share some of my thoughts about authentication, authorization, and performance issues, what I have found so far, and share my thoughts about those. Okay. So first thing is that how are we going to implement authentication and authorization into our microservice is not a silver bullet. So if someone comes to me or you and say, hey, it is not the right way, then of course he has some logic. But what I did here, also I have some logic. So there is no hard and fixed rules, number one. Number two is that every implementation depends on the business. So if the business has, suppose, 20,000 requests per second, so in that use case, the design we will do, it will be not okay if the system has only 100 or 500 or 1000 requests per second. And as you can guess that what does this request means? That means that the business is doing very good. So the company, the institution, organization which is supporting 20,000 requests per second definitely is having huge money from the customers, and they are actually paying huge bill to cloud or whatever their infrastructure is. But if the user is very low and the system is quite small, then we don't have to think about the scalability issue from the very beginning, right? So that's why we say software gets evolved. We are not actually making a fully furnished table or chair. So this is the main difference. Okay, so another thing is that I found 3 different ways I could implement this authentication and authorization service. So let me just open my pen here, now laser point pen here, and overwrite this diagram for you. So number one is that the single authentication authorization server, and it will be called from Ocelot, and if it get passed, then none of the child service will call to the authentication or auth server, right? So in this way, no request will come to the child service if it is banned here. So what's the good here? The good here is since we don't have to call the auth server from each of the client service for authorization, it will be less chatty. So inside of our microservice network, it will be less bandwidth passing through. So number one, this one is good. But the bad thing is that if suppose, again, depending on the client's need, depending on the user's need, or depending on the system's need, if we want to call any service to another service directly, then we should have some mechanism here which actually call again to auth server to to assess if the user of this cell service, which is actually calling, have the permission to call the product service as well or not. So in here we may have a layer which will call the auth service again and again if some of the other service directly calls to the product service. Okay, so there are 2 things we saw. Number one is no calling from the child service. Number 2 is some calling from the child service. There is another way we can actually solve this issue, that is called the sidecar pattern. So what is a sidecar pattern? That is, we are not having any dedicated auth service. Maybe we have, but that is not mandatory. What we do is we copy the whole auth service and add a copy here, each of it here. So what will happen is whenever any request comes to, suppose, customer service, and this customer service, before executing, this auth service, child auth service, will get executed. And because the code is same everywhere, so there is no problem with the business logic, because every code will have the same logic. And since our infrastructure will be shared for these services, these sidecars, So maybe we'll call to a single Redis server for this, or maybe the Redis server will be clustered and the data will be shared between the servers as well. So this is how we can do in 3 different ways. Number 1, directly call to auth server. Number 2 is calls auth server from the product the child service. Number 3 is having a sidecar sidecar service inside of each microservice. So there are 3 ways we can implement the cross-cutting technologies as well. So for example, if we want to implement the log service, logging, then we can do this pattern as well. So either each of the service will call the log service independently, or we can actually create a child log service, and that child log service will be embedded, sidecard to each of the microservice. So instead of calling from the cell service to the logging service directly, so cell service will call to its own logging sidecar child service, and that service will take care how it will send the log to the actual log service. So yep, that's all we can think about. And now let's go back to our demo again one last time. And suppose I want to disable the tenant admin for some reason. So I'm going to just edit. I'm here as the super admin, so I'm just disallow it. And okay, so I said we need to update the cache. But for example, if the user wants to see, okay, it will be okay for now. But if the user, the tenant admin, I should have opened the RabbitMQ. Sorry for that. But in case, where is my token? Okay. Copy, paste. Copy. Okay. See, so the authorization server is sending forbidden right now. So it's from our authorization server. Let's request again. So yep, and it is getting the data from Redis server. I hope you can understood the code here, and it is forbidden. Yep, that's all. Thanks for watching. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.